everyone to Monday's Don't Stop Me Now. Today I have a very special guest and I am so excited he's here to join us. The author and of this book, Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. I am telling you, it is a must read. Chris Kelso is here with us. He is an author, he's a keynote speaker, and a business coach. Amazing to have him join us. So welcome, Chris.
Hey, Paula. It's good to see you. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Good to see you, my friend. So great book. First of all, love it. Love the banner behind you. And I believe mine is signed.
That's right. Yes.
And there were some really key points in here about following your passions. And there was another one here. When you're surrounded by smart people, I'm telling anyone who can see this, go out and buy it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, Chris, first tell us a little bit about who you are, how you came up with this idea, and just a little bit about you.
Okay, that's a loaded question. And
I
we only
know.
have half an hour. So I'm going to try to be quick. So I'm a two-time entrepreneur. I founded a couple of companies and that I've run over the years. And for the last about 6 or 7 years, I've been doing executive coaching and leadership development work, and mostly working with entrepreneurs. And without going into all that background and story, what I will say is that I definitely struggled with imposter syndrome at times in my career. But I didn't know what it was called. And I didn't know, that it was a thing. And when I first learned about imposter syndrome, it was like this huge light bulb moment and a great weight lifted off my shoulders, just to know that A, it's a real thing, and that, psychologists have identified it and called it something, and B, that it happens to a lot of people, and particularly very successful people.
Yeah. And
so that was such a great relief to me that I started talking about it to some of my clients, and even in some of my speeches and with, some of the corporations that I worked with, I started talking about this imposter syndrome thing. And the response that I would get told me that this was a very widespread and very prevalent issue that not enough people were talking about. I remember one of the first times I ever gave a speech on imposter syndrome years ago. Someone came up to me after the talk and said, "You changed my life today."
Oh.
And he said the whole reason that I was here at this entire event was just to hear that 15 minutes. I needed to hear that so badly. And man, so gratifying for me to know that I affected someone. And this was a guy that has been running a successful business for a long time. And I knew who he was, and I had admired his work. And so I knew there was something there, but I'm a person, Paula, that I'm a person that reads a lot. I read a lot of books, and I'm constantly recommending books to people, my clients and other entrepreneurs and people that I talk with. Someone has a problem with finance. Oh, I've got a great small business finance book. Or, you have a marketing struggle. I know a great book about marketing and communication and leadership. Oh, there's lots of leadership books. But I searched and looked, and I couldn't find a book about imposter syndrome that really spoke to my tribe, to my people, which are entrepreneurs, innovators, creators, people that are trying new things and pushing the boundaries. And so it came to a point, Paula, that I felt like this book needed to exist, and it didn't. And so I was compelled to write it. I did not write this because I just wanted to be an author. I just, wanted to write a book, but I felt like the book needed to exist. And I wasn't sure if I could write it. Honestly, I will tell you, Paula, this is my own imposter syndrome kicking in. I worried that I couldn't write a book good enough that I would want my name on the cover.
Oh, but it is a beautiful book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Fortunately, I had a great team. I had a good publisher and a writing coach. Shout out to Matt Litton, who helped me a ton in the process and really helped me to put this thing together in an organized way that is easy to digest and has really spoken to a lot of people. So I told you it would be a long story. That's the very short version of how this book came about.
Well, there are all those there are so many ideas out there. And for you to really connect with this one is so valuable and so important. It's much like the book, that a lot of people write. And so, but this one is so unique and it's so different, and it really talks about the imposter and how to bring your whole self to work, which is something I'm very, very passionate
Yes.
about. So, for us dyslexics who don't get to read a lot, um, but
Mm,
we do a lot of audio. And I did read your book because it's amazing. So,
thank you.
tell me a little bit about what it means to you let's talk about a few things. I want to talk first about what does it mean to you when I say bring your whole self to work?
Mm. I really like this idea of the whole self, and first of all, there's sort of several layers to that. One is that I am not a big fan of the term work-life balance because it sort of puts work and life at odds with one another. It makes them opposing forces that somehow you have to fight off, and that work is the enemy of life. And I believe, number one, that I'm only one person and I only have one life. And so when I think of bringing my whole self to work, I'm really thinking of bringing my whole self to everything that I do, and not trying to segment my work self and my personal self and my friend self and my husband self. I'm Chris Kelso, and you get Chris Kelso in whatever context you encounter Chris Kelso. And I'm not going to say that I do that perfectly with 100% integrity, but it's what I strive for.
Yeah.
And sometimes I fail at it, but it's what I work for. So first off, when I talk about bringing my whole self to work, I'm telling you that I'm bringing the only self that I have, the only version of Chris that I can be is what I bring. But the other side of that, bringing your whole self to work, is about um, the integrity of bringing all of it, the good and the bad, right? Bringing my strengths and my weaknesses, bringing my victories and accomplishments, as well as the areas that I need to stretch and grow and where I'm trying to work.
And not
And so,
fearing, and not, I'm
Paul,
going to interrupt you here, but and not fearing judgment, correct?
yeah, yeah, and not fearing judge. I mean, fearing judgment is one of those things that can always be in the back of your mind because you can't control someone else's judgment.
Yeah.
The Whether or not someone judges you is out of your hands. And frankly, if a judgmental person is around, they're going to judge you no matter what you do anyway. So you almost can't win with somebody who's just looking for a reason to be against you or to find fault. But you
Correct.
have to not fear the judgment. You have to decide that the potential of encountering the judgment is a risk worth taking for the benefit and the value of bringing your whole self, of
Yes.
being vulnerable, of opening up, of letting people know who you really are, and tapping into those strengths while acknowledging and dealing with the weaknesses that are there.
Mm, it's amazing. Amazing. So I love your whole self because it is. You are Chris Kelso. I am
Mhm.
Paula White, right?
Yes.
It's you get what you get. And
Yeah.
I think when people ask you probably what your secret sauce is, it's probably I'm Chris Kelso and I bring my whole self because I used to divide the two very much so.
Mm,
I had a very different life because I thought I had expectations I had to meet at corporate,
yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
think for those climbing the corporate ladder right now, it is to understand that the best version of you is the whole version of you,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that there aren't things about myself that I want to improve. That doesn't mean that there aren't skills that I want to develop that are not where I want them to be. It doesn't mean that I don't have some bad habits or some, negative thoughts or some default behaviors that I'd like to change. I think self-improvement is a worthy goal, and it's a journey that we should always be on. Is, okay, what's the next part of my life that I can make better? How can I bring the best version of myself that I have in every situation?
With the new responsibilities with each year that we age.
Yeah. But there's a difference between striving to become the best version of me and trying to live up to some other false standard or measure up to some other image or ideal that I see somewhere else, or to try to live another person's life or to walk out their career, their journey. I just have come to the place that I realize that's futile. I'm always gonna fail if I'm trying to live somebody else's life. And so why bother?
On page 110, it leads right into it. And I know you know where I'm going. Don't fall into the comparison trap.
Yes.
That's what you were just talking about. You have a great story on this about the airport.
The airport. Remind me.
Oh, the airport, and you saw a gentleman. Maybe it wasn't you. Where you saw someone and you thought, I want to be just like them, but you didn't understand what they had to do to get there.
I don't remember an airport story coming to mind, but I've definitely experienced that in several contexts and talked to a lot of people who they aspire to be like someone else, or they want to accomplish someone else. I bet I know the story that you're thinking of. I was in a hotel lobby and I was overhearing airport hotel. There you go. You threw me with the airport, but I'm tracking with you now. I was in a hotel lobby. I remember this very distinctly. I could almost draw a picture of what the guy looked like. This was well over 10 years ago, but I remember there were these two men sitting at the table right next to me, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I could overhear this conversation with this businessman who was obviously very successful, and he was also quite a bit older, possibly a decade or two older than I was at the time. And I heard him say some things like, I'm really trying to slow down. I'm trying to reconnect with my family. I've traveled all over the world and I've done these huge business deals and I've had all the success and I've made millions of dollars, but now my marriage is strained and I barely have a relationship with my kids. And as I listened to that guy talk, and the first thing that ran through my mind is, oh my goodness, what do I need to do to make sure that I don't ever say that I don't ever get to the place that I have to make this huge adjustment.
Right.
And I think that, I've tried to adopt the mindset that if I make lots of little adjustments, if I'm sort of constantly reevaluating, that I won't have to make that big shift one day because I won't get so far off track. Mm-hmm. Now, time will tell. We'll see how well I do at that. But that's my goal, is to be, making lots of little adjustments so I don't have to make the big shift. But as I listened to that guy, a couple of things struck me. The first thing that stood out to me was that all success comes at a cost, that success requires sacrifice, and that if you're going to pursue one thing, you're going to have to say no to something else, and to lots of things, really. And we all have to make those decisions of what we're going to trade off, but it's really important to recognize that those trade-offs are real and to be intentional about what you're willing to sacrifice in pursuit of success. Right. I don't want to sacrifice my family relationships in pursuit of success. And maybe that guy didn't want to either, but he wasn't intentional about it. So he came to the place that he realized he had made some sacrifices on some things that were really, really important. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was the first realization, is that success is going to require sacrifice. And I need to be really intentional about those sacrifices. And the second realization, which that I think you're really alluding to here with the comparison trap, is that I usually have no idea what another person has chosen to sacrifice in pursuit of their success.
Yeah.
Right. So if I had just seen that guy speak on stage or talk about his business, or I'd heard him in some other context where I only heard all the great things he's done, but I didn't know that part of his story, I might have felt like a failure because I didn't think I could do what he's done while maintaining my values and my boundaries and, preserving what's important to me about my family relationships. And so anytime we are comparing ourselves to another person, we're always comparing the reality of our own lives to a filtered and perhaps a very polished version of their life. And that doesn't mean it's malicious. It's just the reality is we don't know somebody's whole story. We don't know all the behind the scenes stuff that happened. We only get pieces and snippets. And so the comparison trap is so dangerous precisely because anytime we're measuring ourselves against someone else, it's not an accurate measurement and it's not a fair measurement. And yet we dock ourselves so much for those things that we feel like we've fallen short compared to someone else.
So how can young leaders today stay out of that comparison trap? Because I know that personally, that is something that a lot of people do. They want to emulate this person. They want to be just like this person. They want to climb that ladder. How do we get into young leaders today not to fall into that comparison trap?
I think we have to separate learning from that comparison and that value. Okay. So I've decided that I can learn from others and I want to observe and take in and figure out how can I grow by observing someone's successes and their failures, the things they've done right and the mistakes they've made, and learn from those things so that I can, take some shortcuts. Perhaps I can, get a little bit ahead because I learned from somebody else's mistakes. Certainly if you can learn from my mistakes, please do, and don't have to repeat the same ones that I made. But that learning is different than comparison and measurement. And so what I've decided is that the only person I need to compare myself against and the only person that I need to be better than is me yesterday.
Oh, I love that.
So if I'm better than I was yesterday, I'm successful. And it doesn't matter if I'm only 2% better or I'm 20% better. And it doesn't matter if Paula is 10% better and I'm only 8% better than me. Paula's on her journey and I'm on my journey.
Yeah.
And I can learn from Paula and I can learn from other great entrepreneurs and other professional speakers and other authors. And I certainly want to learn from as many of those people as I can, but I'm not going to derive my value. I'm not going to allow my self-confidence and my self-esteem to be based on where someone else is on their journey that is different than mine. So the only person that I want to be better than is me yesterday. And if I do that every single day, I am on the road to success.
I think that right there is the line of the day. I only need to be better than I was yesterday. That right there is probably, with so much knowledge out in the world, I think having just that little tip of, no, I just need to be better than I was yesterday. Does that mean I need to walk 10 more minutes than I did the day before? Yes. But what if I only make 5 more minutes? Great. You're still where you are. You're still better than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that those little bits of improvement, incremental improvement consistently over a long period of time makes a big, big difference.
And I think you brought up another word, intentional, being intentional and having intentionality to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. We are often changing as people, whether we want to admit it or not. And some of those changes are unintentional. We build habits. We start to do things. We let words creep into our language that are good or bad. We develop habits over time. We break habits or let things slide where we had discipline. We're kind of always in a constant state of change.
Mhm.
Even the people that are very stable, very consistent, they don't stay the same for their entire lives, right? We get older, we get smarter, hopefully, but we're always changing. And so the question is, are you being intentional about how you're changing, or are you just sort of letting change happen to you and taking it as it comes? And if you're letting change happen to you, then you're being influenced by your surroundings. You're being influenced only by the people around you and the circumstances that you're in and the season of life that you're in. But if you're being intentional about those changes and you're making the changes you want, then sure, some other unintentional changes are going to happen. We can't completely stop that 100%, but we have a lot better chance of getting where we want to be and of making improvements in the direction we want to go if we're being intentional about what we're changing and how we're going about it.
Right. And I love that. And um, you talk about two different types of people in your book.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give us a little bit of flavor on that so we can,
Yeah.
I love
So
it.
with the book, as we mentioned, is about imposter syndrome, and that's that persistent fear that you're not really what people think you are, and you have this voice in the back of your head that's telling you you don't measure up, you're not good enough, and most of all that you're at risk of failure, that you're going to be exposed at some point as a fraud. And I've recognized sort of two distinct modes of dealing with that inner critic, that voice of the imposter. And the first method is to avoid that voice. And by avoid that voice, I mean to stay in your comfort zone and stay away from anything that makes you insecure or uncomfortable, or stay away from risky situations where the potential for failure or for making a mistake is there. And so I call this approach, this sort of personality, I call it the tour guide. So tour guides, they act like leaders, but they're only willing to lead people where they've been before and where they have a script and where the boundaries are well defined and they know all the answers to all the questions. And they kind of tend to just make the same basic loop over and over and over again, just repeating the same tour over, because it's comfortable. And their confidence is based on knowing the boundaries and knowing all the answers and being the expert, and knowing more than everyone around them and feeling like this is my sweet spot and I'm in my zone. But it's a very tightly bound life. It's a very small circle of influence. And though they act like a leader, they can't really take people anywhere that they've never been before, because they have to rely heavily on a script, on that comfort of experience. And so they avoid the imposter, they avoid the inner critic, because if they never go anywhere where they don't know what they're doing and where the risk of failure is higher, then that voice can't say you're outside of your element, you don't have what it takes to make it. They just stay in the zone where they have what it takes, and they don't ever want to get outside of that.
Right. They don't ever want to hear, I told you so.
They don't want to hear, I told you so. They don't want someone else to know more than they do. And they don't want to get into a place where there's a question they can't answer.
Right.
Because that makes them feel inadequate. So they just avoid the situations where imposter syndrome creeps up on them. But the other approach to dealing with the imposter, to dealing with that voice in your head, is not to avoid it, but to disarm it, to take away its power. And I call this personality the explorer. And the reason I call it the explorer is because, unlike a tour guide, an explorer is not only comfortable getting into an area that they don't know, they actually get excited about it. Yeah. They get excited about the unknown because that's where the learning opportunities are. So an explorer knows that you have to get out and explore something before you know if it's the place for you or not. That you might go a certain way, you might take a certain path and hit a dead end and realize it's not going to get you where you want to go, and you have to turn around and come back. But But an explorer sees that not as failure, but as learning. So an explorer adopts this learner's mindset of, I'm just out trying things. And if there's somebody who knows more than I do, I don't see them as a threat. I see them as an asset. I see them as a valuable contributor to the team, because when we get into unknown territory, maybe they have some knowledge that I don't have. And I don't have to be the expert in every situation, because I'm here to learn and explore, and that my value comes in the growth that I experience by exploring. And so the big difference between these two personalities is that the tour guide gets their confidence from the known, but the explorer gets their confidence from their ability to learn.
Yeah.
So where they don't know, they can comfortably say, I don't know this. I'm not familiar with this area, but I can figure it out. I can be the one to map it. I can be the one to put it on the chart. I can be the one to go up and down and around and figure out how we get here and back. And I will know it. I may not know it now, but I'm comfortable in that learning process. So tour guides are afraid to try something new. They're afraid to get out of their comfort zone. Explorers are willing to be wrong, because they know that being wrong and being in unfamiliar territory is how you learn and grow and get better. And when you have that mindset, and that inner critic comes in and says, you're out of your comfort zone, you're doing something you don't know, you're not fully equipped to do this, the explorer just says, great, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm gonna try, and I may fail, but I'm gonna figure it out. And if there are other experts around me, I don't see them as a threat. I see them as opportunities for me to learn from them. This is where I need to be. This is who I need to be with. And it goes back to that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you should change rooms.
Yeah.
And an explorer is looking to be the dumbest person in the room. They want to surround themselves with smart people, even smarter than them, because that's how they're going to grow. That's how they're going to raise up. And that voice of the imposter that says, you don't deserve to be here around these really smart people, loses its power when you see those people as not intimidating, but as the source of all the wisdom you're about to accumulate. And so it takes away the power of that voice.
And let me ask you a question, because that's really great. Great. I mean, I love the explorer. I think the explorer is where we all need to be, because there's so much that we know we don't know, but then there's this little bit of what we don't know.
Yes.
And that to me is like the sweet spot to just go and understand, what is it that we don't know? And I love your tip of, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
I love that. Change rooms immediately. But is there something to be said about, and I ask this because my son's an engineer, as you know, and they are wrong 99% of the time. They have to be. They have to be wrong 99% of the time to get that 1% right. In being an entrepreneur and building a business, is there ever such a point that you come into wanting to learn so much and learn that you might overlearn and put your business at risk?
I think there is. I mean, there's a time that your insatiable curiosity can drive you in too many directions, and can basically diffuse your focus.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to learn a lot and to be focused on learning and always be looking for the next new thing. It's another thing to say, hey, learning is not enough. In some areas, I need to attain mastery. I need to actually get good at something. And that requires focus and consistency. And Polly, you and I know, because we met through a public speaking program that we've both been a part of, that, you can take a class and learn how to, you can, do Toastmasters or go through a course and learn how to be a public speaker. And you can get sort of the surface and a few tips and tricks, but to be great at it, you've got to practice. you've got to rehearse, you've got to have discipline, you've got to do the same thing over and over and over again. And at some point, you're not learning anything new, you're just rehearsing.
Yeah.
You're just getting it into your bones, you're just getting it fine-tuned, you're getting it really, really well done. And so that's a different level of focus. And I think for entrepreneurs especially, there's this tension between, I love the exploring, I love finding things new, I love the learning opportunities that are out there, and I need to put in the work and the discipline to achieve mastery in some things. Now here's where the balance comes in, because I think we can learn a lot more things than we can master. And so it's okay to learn a lot of things and then focus in on a handful that we're going to be great at and put in the work and the discipline to do that. But you can't put in that work and discipline and focus on a few things to the exclusion of learning. I'm not ever going to learn anything new. I'm just going to be great at this one thing and do that. That's getting into tour guide mode. Exactly. That's getting into, I'm only going to do one thing for the rest of my life and I'm done learning. And I think when you quit learning, you might as well just stop living. Yeah. So you're in a dangerous spot because you're at the risk of starting to decline in your skills, your abilities, and your ability to adapt when you stop learning. On the other end of the extreme, though, you can't learn to the exclusion of ever developing any real skill at anything. So that's where that tension comes in. And I think that's where the balance is you decide, I'm going to learn several things and I'm going to master a few things. And again, going back to intentionality, being very intentional about which is which.
Absolutely. Well, Chris Kelso, we are up on our time and I wish we had I know.
That went by fast.
I wish we had an hour more. So stay with me for just one moment and I'll be right back. Hey, everyone, a reminder, get Chris's book. It is amazing. And he goes through a lot of what we went through today. He is a fabulous author and a great business leader, executive coach, leadership coach. So if you want to get connected with him, I put his link on LinkedIn at the bottom. Until next week, keep rocking your talent, and I'll see you next Monday.